Okay, welcome everybody.
Okay.
We did our introductions. We'll get now into the chapter 16.
So we're going to dive right into the text here. So it starts with, after this being the visit from the princess who had come by and tried to wake the viceroy. She was unsuccessful in waking the viceroy, and ends up leaving and laments how difficult it's been and how he lost everything again. And she writes him a message on her headscarf in tears. She writes a message for him. So that's where we are. After this, the viceroy awoke and asked his servant, "Where in the world am I?" The servant told him the entire story about the many soldiers that had passed, the chariot, the princess, and her great crying and grief. Suddenly he looked and he noticed the headscarf next to him. "Where is this from?" he asked. The servant answered that the princess had written on it with her tears. The viceroy took the scarf and held it up to the sun. He began to see letters. He read that at this time she is no longer in the previous palace. Rather, you will need to search for a mountain of gold and a palace of pearls, and there you will find me. So, where do we start, Rabbi?
Okay, well, we'll start like this, and then I'll start, and you'll see what comes out after. Okay, so awesome. This is an awesome chapter, by the way, and it's going to be a difficult chapter. When we get to the second aspect of this chapter, it's something that is like very beyond, very difficult to understand, but we're going to do our best to package it in a way that we can all benefit from it, God willing. But we'll start at the beginning with the first idea, which is also a very important idea. So it's like this: the viceroy finds beside him this kerchief, the headscarf, and he holds it up to the sun, and only once he holds it up to the sun is he able to actually see the message that the princess has put on the scarf for him. And remember, the headscarf is referring to expanded intellect, expanded knowledge, expanded consciousness, right? And this is what the princess is trying to give to him to be successful on his journey. But in order to see it, a very important detail, he has to first hold it up to the sun, like it's a secret decoder ring or something, right? Like it's a special step that has to happen. So what does it refer to? What does it mean? So the way Rabbi Yaakov explains it is that the words that he uses is that this represents the only way that we're able to see the inner light of Torah, the inner message that the princess is leaving for us, is through the teachings of the tzaddikim, is by having faith in their power, by having emunas chachamim, faith in the tzaddikim. So what does that mean? To myself, I think about the metaphor of the sun, meaning like this. The sun is really the source of like all life on our planet, all existence. Nothing can, of course, Hashem is the source of everything, but as with regards to science and nature, if we didn't have the sun, we have nothing. We have no warmth, we have no energy, we have no anything. Where we'd be a plain rock without the sun, right? The sun is what gives us it gives us the vitamins we need. Even it causes our plants to grow. It gives us the exact, perfect, to the degree, right temperature that our planet needs to be able to support our life, right? The sun is in a certain way a source of life for us, to such an extent that the Rambam explains that when the first idolaters came into existence, it wasn't that they just all of a sudden, everyone knew about Hashem, from Adam Rishon as the generations went down. And then suddenly somebody said, okay, what are you talking about Hashem? I'm making up a new, Getchke, a new God, right? That's not what happened. People actually went through a process where they so appreciated the sun as a messenger of Hashem, as like one of the tools that Hashem used in order to give life to the world, that they began to appreciate that so much that they began to ascribe power to it itself, right? And through that, Avodah Zarah came into the world. But what do we see from that? Just from that explanation of the Rambam, we see that there's something to the sun. It's so powerful. It gives us our nourishment. It gives us everything we need, right? So too, if we take that perspective and we plug it into the headscarf of the princess over here, we're saying this is what we need in our lives This is what we need to be successful in our lives. This is what we need to find our inner tzaddik, our inner neshama. This is what we need to connect to Hashem. This is what we need to accomplish our goals in life, is to be able to see the depth of the Pnimius HaTorah, is to be able to find, wow, welcome Vered in person, is to be able to, sorry, you threw me off, okay. Woo! Okay, welcome Mark Hatzav. Wow. Okay, a few guests just walked in the room. Sorry to please. So, so in order to, I got to get my composure again. in order to grab a hold of the all-important nature of the Pnimius HaTorah, the inner message that the Torah has within it, we have to hold it up to the tzaddikim. We have to look to those tzaddikim as if that's the source of all of our life. I need those words of the tzaddikim, and I know that the words that they have are going to be there for me. Just like I know that the sun is going to rise tomorrow, and that the sun is going to make my plants grow, and the sun is going to warm our planet, and the sun is going to give me vitamin D, and it's going to give everything that I need. And it's so necessary and so important. If I look towards the teachings of the tzaddikim with this perspective and with this desire, only then am I going to be able to see what I need to see. Right? And he gives a great example over here, right? Specifically, he says it's kind of built in to the concept of the Lost Princess, of the story of the Lost Princess. You could, right? If you didn't care, if you weren't interested, you could read this story as if it's like a children's story and be like, it's silly rabbinic story, one of those old things that they used to do in Europe way back in the day. I don't need it. It's just a fable, right? Oh, but once you know what it is, and once you know where it's coming from, and you put your effort into it, and you delve deep into it, and you know that I need what's in there to activate me in my life and to give me everything I need on my path. And then what do we see comes out of it? Some of the most amazing things that we've ever learned come out of that little thing. Why? Only because we decided as a group that we're going to go and we're going to delve into it to the greatest depths we can. And Rabbi Yaakov decided to write this book to bring it to us. But if we didn't view it in that way and we didn't put that kind of effort and emphasis into it, right, it could just be a storybook on the shelf. Right? So this is the way that we have to see the entire body of Pnimius HaTorah. I can't live without it. The world can't exist without it. We must have it. We must use the tzaddikim. We must connect to the tzaddikim. What do you got to say, Varen?
We just finished a class with Rabbi Lansberg, and we ended the class with exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
He said, "What's the difference between a teacher and a preacher?
Right.
Is a preacher someone who can say something and then you walk out, you've learned nothing, or a teacher is someone who you walk out and they've taught you something that you can apply to yourself." And they said the same thing with the Torah. It's not a storybook.
Right.
Like we can just read it and, okay, so this happened and that happened. But the Torah is meant to teach us a lesson. So unless we internalize it and apply it to our own lives in our own way, because you can read in different stages of your life, then it just becomes a storybook. But if we use it as a way of a learning tool,
right,
then it becomes what it's meant to be.
Amazing. Jeff, you got something to say? I see your hands up.
I do. Thank you, guys.
Rabbi Yaakov, what do you got?
I got this for everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Right. Hashem has placed the sun so perfectly and so consistently that to me, I know I'll never reach perfection, but I have to strive for consistency. I once read that if the sun
We lost you.
all burn up, and if it was 2 centimeters or 5 centimeters further away from Earth, we'd all freeze to death. So it's amazing how every day Hashem puts that bright light in the exact spot that we need it.
Amazing. Totally.
So the way you just said it, that Hashem puts the sun exactly where we need it. As we've been saying, I heard it said a little bit differently. That kind of struck me very hard. It said our approach. We can read Chumash, we can read Navi, we can read Halacha, we can read whatever it is in Torah, and we can take it just as the face value, as the so-called black letters, just the letters and seeing the words and these are the words and that's it. That's one approach, but that's not the holding it up to the sun approach. Like you said, Hashem put the sun exactly where we need it to be. That needs to be our approach to learning Torah of any kind. To, before you sit down, say whatever I'm going to read here, whatever I'm going to hear here, whatever Torah is coming at me right now, was meant and written specifically for me, and to have emunah in that concept that this was written specifically for me, right? It came from Hashem. So there's a few things going on here. It came from Hashem. There's a pasuk here in Tehillim that Rabbi Yaakov brings. Az amarti hine vasi b'megillah sefer kasav alai. Pretty much means that what's written in this book was written about and for me. That's the approach. How many times do we sit down and learn? Okay, what does the Chumash say? What does the Halacha? We're doing it to build knowledge. That's the wrong approach. We're learning it because it's giving me direction and instruction for what I need in my life right now. And like you said with the sun, if it would be any different, it's placed exactly perfect to give us what we need in this moment. So what's going on here in the story is there's a revelation here that happens when he holds the headscarf up to the sun. He's revealing something, but it's a revelation that, in order to be revealed, had to initially be constricted. It couldn't be just revealed immediately. And there was actually a double constriction here. What happened is that the viceroy was in a situation where the princess, what is the source of the message here that he's reading? What is the source of the message? The source is the princess. She was there not too long ago. She was there herself trying to speak to him. But he wasn't ready yet to be able to receive the words of the princess. Right? So he was asleep. It was literally falling on deaf ears. He wasn't ready to be makabel, to receive it directly from the princess. Not only that, he wasn't able to receive it written straight by the princess. It had to be written in tears, right? Only when he was ready to receive it and to view it in this way of, this is meant for me, I'm going to hold it up to the light, again, meaning that I know now that this is meant for me. Was he able to see what was going on, right? And it's I
was thinking that imagine a person is reading a study about cancer testing procedures, and how here's the latest science and how they use these types of cells and microscope, science, whatever they do to test for cancer, right? And they're reading the latest scientific research on how it's done. Okay, they're reading it. It's very interesting, whatever, right? But what if now you're reading the results of your own test, and that's the book that comes to you, and all of a sudden, this is not just something interesting. This is me. This is about me. This is my life, and it's important, and it's everything about me. It's a totally different way of looking at something, right? This is what we're saying is the perspective of holding it up to that sun. It's everything. It's everything that I need, and I must have this information. It's the only thing that's going to guide me. It's the only thing that's going to keep me going, right? It's a whole different way of looking at it, and. He says, do you have more to say there?
Yeah, I remember what I wanted to say. So the final part of it was if we look at what the ultimate source was, so we said it's the princess. What is the princess? It's our neshama. That's really where that message is coming from, right? So it's reinforcing this idea that it's got to come from within. You got to be learning whatever it is we're learning, Pnimius HaTorah, and the truth is it extends beyond Pnimius HaTorah. It extends to all aspects of the Torah. Read it as if you know, not as if. Read it because it is for you and it is from you. There's Rav Moshe Weinberger explains it amazing. He says that going a bunch of steps back, right before the world was created, right, and all there was Hashem, and He was Ein Sof, and it's right, infinite. There was nothing else. And in order for any of this to exist, for any of us to exist, there had to be a constriction. There had to be a tzimtzum, right, and that manifests in many different ways. One of the ways in which Hashem constricted Himself was into the words of the Torah, which we know that because their source is from an infinite source, even though it seems like it's constricted and limited to the words and to the letters of the actual Torah, in reality, it's completely infinite. And that's why we can be here thousands of years later, still finding new explanations, new meanings, all that kind of stuff. So when we're looking at the restriction, when we're looking at everything that the princess represents, and we're realizing that really it's within us, and we talked about a number of times that each one of us has this chelek elikami ma, we have this piece of Hashem that exists within us, our holy soul. The whole point of the entire book is just trying to reveal that. It's trying to grasp, to re-identify with our souls, more so with our souls than just with our bodies, right?
That's the importance of finding yourself in the story.
Of finding yourself in the story. In this story and in every story in Tanakh.
Every story,
right?
Yeah. Every Torah.
Every Torah, every Parsha, every word. And it's an approach. It's an approach to all Torah learning. So
the next step in the book, Rabbi Klein goes to page 278, an elevated perspective. It's an awesome idea. And basically it's saying like this. Let's break it down and see if we can understand it simply. So the princess leaves the viceroy the headscarf with a message on it. One of the aspects of this event taking place is that the princess is leaving him something encouraging. And she sees everything that happened to him from a certain perspective. Right? Not that he's just a failure and he's worthless and forget about him. Rather that, you know what, all those things that happened to you, they're just part of your journey. And you're going to keep going, and you're going to find me. Right? You're going to find me in the most amazing place. Right? But the perspective is that you're on your way. And like we said from the very beginning, at the beginning of the book, Rabbi Nachman tells us the end. He finds the princess. He's going to find it. It's for sure going to happen. Right? It's like at the beginning of the book that this is the perspective. Right? And now, here again, the princess is leaving him encouragement, saying, you're on their journey, keep going. You're going to find it, it's going to work out, right? Because I see that's the ultimate ending. So he brings that this is really the view, the way that tzaddikim look at the world. He brings it from Rav Kook. Rav Kook writes extensively on this idea in particular. But that everything in the world, everything in the universe, is all, whether we like it or not, whether we feel it or not, is all coming to its ultimate conclusion. Everything is coming to its ultimate peak. And it's going to happen. Right? And you can look at the world and you can see it as just a bunch of fearful, terrible events taking place. And everywhere you look, you can be afraid. Everywhere you look, you can see negativity. Or you can look from the perspective of Kedusha, the perspective of the tzaddikim, and you can say, this is all part of the ultimate clarification, the ultimate separation of good and evil, the ultimate of drawing out the good and potential in the entire creation. And that's everything that's happening. Right? And you can see the world in this way. And from this view, life is very different. And the existence is very different. And he brings this fantastic story that Weinberger taught over that we'll say just outside very quickly. It's about two Hasidim from Odessa. Right? And the two Hasidim from Odessa came to see the Rebbe. And they came to the Rebbe, which was the Rebbe Rashab? The Rebbe Rashab of Lubavitch. They came to see the Rebbe Rashab, and both of them came in at separate times for an audience, right? A yechidus with the Rebbe. And the first one went in, and the Rebbe asked him, how's everything in Odessa? And so he said to him, "Oh, in Odessa, Baruch Hashem, we have shuls, we have yeshivas, we have gemachs for people who need, and we have chesed, we have all kinds of stuff going on in Odessa, Baruch Hashem, right?" And so the Rebbe gave him 10 rubles, I think 10 rubles, which was at the time, I don't know what a ruble's worth now, but at the time was a serious amount of money. It was a nice donation to help him out. And so he came out and he told his buddy, the other chassid, exactly what happened, and he told him what was going on, and he gave him 10 rubles, and he's like, "Wow, you told him that? That's not what's happening. Like, Odessa's a mess right now, and people are poor, people are starving. It's not easy, and it's terrible, right?" And so he said, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into the Rebbe now, and I'm going to tell him what's really going on. If he gave him 10 rubles when he thought everything was great, he's going to give me even more, right?" So he goes in and the Rebbe asks him, as was his minhag, "How's it in Odessa?" And he begins to say, "Oh my gosh, Rebbe, it's not good. People are poor. We don't have enough money, and the Russians are not nice to us, and some things never change, and and life is bad, right?" And so the Rebbe gave him 1 ruble and sent him on his way. And he was like, "What? How come I only got 1 ruble? I told you what was really going on." And the answer is, the understanding is, the Rebbe told him, is that there's 2 different Odessas. There's the Odessa Ilah, I think is the word he used, Ilan Tatar, right? There's the Odessa Ilah. That's the high level Odessa. That's the elevated Odessa. There's the elevated Odessa. That's someone who lives in Odessa in an elevated way, with an elevated perspective. And what do they see in Odessa? They see the good things that are going on. They see how things are happening in a good way, right? And then there's the Odessa Tata, the lower, the lowly, the low perspective Odessa. And in that place, in that Odessa, it's not a nice place and it's not good, right? And so I believe what the Rebbe was doing. It doesn't say exactly why he gave 10 to that guy. Would have thought maybe he should still give 10 to the guy who's living in the low place, right? But how is someone going to be successful in the world? It's not going to. My 10 rubles are not going to help you if you're living with that perspective. If everything you see is negative, and everything you see, everything's going downhill, everything's sliding down, and it's going to be the worst, and it's getting worse. If that's what you see, my money's not going to help you. I can't help you. Oh, but if you're living in the Odessa Ilah, if you're seeing that everything that's happening with Emunah is happening for a reason, and everything that's happening is being guided, and it's ultimately going to come to an ultimate tikkun, and an ultimate conclusion, right? Then, here, let me help you. I'm going to give you money because it's going to help you along your way, because you're on the right path, right? Just like the princess left him the message of encouragement. I know it's been hard, but you know what? You're on the right path, and you're ultimately going to be successful, right? So I'm leaving you this beautiful, sweet, hidden message. This is the second important point of this chapter. Yeah.
Isn't it also like the gratitude thing? Like the more you're grateful, the more abundance you have, and the less grateful you are. Like
sure.
God says, if you're going to cry, I'll give you a reason to cry.
Right.
So doesn't it correlate to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think they're all one and the same thing, right? Yeah, what they would call nowadays, remember those people who don't like to say God and they like to say the universe? They would call it the law of attraction, right? Whatever you put out, if you put out positivity, you'll receive positivity, right? Okay, so you heard it here. Yeah, I think it's the same thing, 100%. Very good. Anything else on that section, Shmuley?
I just want to share. This is it's supposed to be a book club where we share how what affected us and what hit us and what we took from it. I got to just say, from a personal point of view, this story hit me hard.
Yeah.
Because we're living in times, and we're living in a place where it's very easy to look around, our country, our town, whatever you want to call it, even the world in a lot of ways, and say, what a terrible place, what a tough situation. And there's so many things we can point to that I'm not going to do right now. And people are literally fleeing here every week. I hear another 1 or 2 families who are trying to leave because they're just they've decided it's no good. And on Shavuos night, we had all night learning here in the shul, And we were zocheh to hear a very special shir. I don't think you were there for the. Oh no, I think you were there for the latter part of the shir with Rabbi Saba. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, we're talking about different things, Amuna and Parnasa, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing. But towards the end of the shir, one of the things he did was just sort of an exercise. He said, "Okay, we're going to go around the room now, and I want everyone to say something they're thankful for." Right? People said, my wife, my kids, my parnasa, the shul. People named all different kinds of things. And at the end of it, someone said to him, "No, Rabbi Saba, what are you thankful for?" He said, "I'm thankful I live in Thornhill. It's such a beautiful, it's aesthetically pleasing. We have plenty of shuls, we have kollels, we have, food, water." Like, he was just so thankful, we have a good, he said, look at America, it's like dirty and crime and da-da-da. And meanwhile, like, so many people here are just like, we got to move to America. It's we're done over here. Just like, I'm thankful for Thornhill. It's like, so as someone who related to these people, I look at all these guys moving to Florida and stuff. It's like, that sounds pretty good, But I was like, you know what? Maybe he's onto something here. He's living in the Thornhill Ilah.
Thornhill Ilah.
He's living in the Thornhill Ilah. Yeah. And then we read this story, a week later. I was like, okay, this is.
I'm getting the message.
I'm getting the message. So it's
that's a good one.
Yeah. Perspective is really everything.
Beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Okay, let's move on to the next section of the story. The next two sections in the book, starting on page Rish Pei Beis 282 and 286, are kind of connected. So I think maybe we'll try to shmush them together a little bit. I just want to preface the next step that we're going to by saying that it's very, very, it's complicated and it's very deep. And I feel like we need Rabbi Tatz to give one of his introductions here, that we're talking about things that we by definition cannot truly understand, but we're going to do the best we can to get some type of grasp about these deep matters. We're going to do our best. That's all we're going to do. But it's hard. It's going to be hard. So the first of these two sections that go together, he titles "Bringing the Ultimate Honor to Hashem." And the basic premise of this section is that, Rabbi Nachman speaks about this a number of times, bringing from Jethro, from the Chumash, right? Who was he was a convert to Judaism, but not just any old convert. He was like the biggest baki in Avodah Zarah there ever was. He knew literally every single type of Avodah Zarah. He went around the world trying to learn all the types of Avodah Zarah and doing everything, right? And L'maisa, he was a truth seeker, obviously, right? He was looking for something. But in the end, he became a Jew. And Rabbi Yaakov says Chazal teach, but I think it's quoted from the Zohar Kadosh, that when Yisro left all of that and became a Jew and became close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was the biggest Kiddush Shem Shemayim that there ever was. It was the biggest sanctification, glorification of Hashem that there ever was. And what does that mean to us? It means that when we go through things and we leave a certain low existence that we were implanted into, and we become a new version of ourselves, and we leave that old version of us behind, that is a huge glorification of Hashem. That is, mamish, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in the world. It's the best honor, the biggest honor to Hashem, right? And so we see within this story over here.
He says there.
Oh, he says there. We see in the story over here, right? It's the same type of perspective. You could either look and say, this viceroy, he's a neb. He keeps messing up every step of the way. Every step of the way he messes up. What? On the last day, he's on his way from his spot to the palace and he gets drunk? He just drinks wine? Right? He falls asleep? Who is this guy? Right? Done. Reminds me of a funny thing. Has anybody here ever seen the movie Ushpizin?
Yes.
Yeah? Fantastic movie, right? It's a beautiful movie. It's about Sukkot and it's about whatever. Anyway, L'maisa, the story in the movie is there's a guy and him and his wife, they don't have children. And they live in Mea Shearim, they're Chasidei Breslov. And he's down in the dumps. He's depressed. and so he's sad, and so he's not going to learn in the yeshiva when he's supposed to, whatever, and he gets down, whatever, and then anyway, the movie is totally amazing, but basically he goes down, he gets like to the lowest point, he hits rock bottom, and throughout the movie, and then in the end of the movie they have a child, and they experience a tremendous elevation. It's a fantastic movie. I suggest you watch it. I don't often suggest watch movies, but this one everyone's got to watch. But I'll never forget, there was this one guy I was talking to about this movie, and he's like from a real certain like a Litvish kollel, right, where it's very like black and white by the book, no chassidus, no nothing. And his rabbi watched the movie and was like, I had to turn it off halfway through. Who is this guy? He's not showing up to kollel. What does he expect's going to happen? You got to get up. You got to go to kollel, and then right. It's like, what's the perspective? How do you look at this guy as just a failure because he's struggling and he's working through these problems, and he's just it's his fault. He's a failure. He's nothing, right? Or do you see it like we see over here, like those challenges that the guy's going through? When he's gonna move past those, it's gonna be the biggest honor to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he came from there and went to here, right? It's a totally different perspective. You with me?
I'm with you. Yeah. No, and we see that the failure, right, we didn't mention this, but like kind of the end of the very last part there was mentioning that even despite his quote unquote constant failures, there's still been major progress.
Yeah.
Because she's no longer, the princess is no longer in the palace of the Lo Tov.
Right.
Rather, she's in this castle on the Gold Mountain, in the Pearl Castle on the Golden Mountain.
And it was because of him.
And it was because of him.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's been major. It's like the failures caused that progress.
Right. Fantastic.
So we don't understand that until without this concept that we're starting to talk about now.
Yeah.
About when a person is, the way Rabbi Yaakov kind of puts it, someone who stays in the fight and is fighting the good fight every day. It's each of those little victories bring tremendous kavod and nachas ruach. Pleasure to Hashem. That's what Hashem wants. That's why we're here to begin with, right? Hashem could have just created, robots that don't sin, or just had the malachim and called it a day. The malachim don't do anything wrong. He wanted us to mess up and to come back from that.
I don't know if it was on purpose. I hope Rabbi Klein hears this. But this section, this like little couple pages here that we just read, was all about looking at your own life and seeing the good in it, seeing the good progress in it, seeing, as opposed to just seeing negativity and falling into yush, despair, right? You got to look for the good points, right? And it begins on page 282, which is the Torah of Azamra in
Yeah.
I can't imagine that it was on purpose, but maybe it was. Who knows? Yeah, interesting, right? Okay.
So it sounds like you're holding it up to the light.
Right, that's right. So that's the main idea of this little mini section over here. Is ein shum yush ba'olam klal. We have to never look at our negativities. We have to always be moving forward and always trying to build on our successes and moving forward. Okay, now we're getting into the hard part here. We can move on. Yeah. Okay. So let's do our best over here. This is a hard one. There's a something that's talked about in Jewish thought a lot, and that is the contradiction of Yediyah and Bechira. What this means is that the apparent contradiction of free will, free choice, Bechira Chofshit, right? And Yediyah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem knows already everything that's going to happen and what's going to happen. And that it already happened, really, according to Hashem, because He's beyond time, right? So how could I have free will if Hashem knows already what's going to happen? It's done. I literally could not have chosen anything different because He already knows that it's happened, right? And you might be thinking in your head right now, oh, come on. No. Really, it's like, yeah, He knows it, but I still get to choose. And it's just He sees it from a different, if you think you almost got it, you don't have it. If you spend a little bit more time on it and go a little bit deeper, you realize that you'll get deeper and deeper, right? It's actually one of the things, interestingly, that Rabbi Nachman himself, it's funny that he's bringing, Rabbi Klein is bringing this whole thing from Rav Tzadok HaKohen about how to understand this on a very deep level and try to figure it out. Whereas Rabbi Nachman he says, you can't understand this. Don't think too much about it. Only once Mashiach comes, when the whole world is filled with De'as Hashem, a new consciousness, then you can understand it. Right now, you can't. So don't get too upset. Right? Here, he's going on page after page to try and explain it. But this is the contradiction. And so he brings from the Rambam that the Rambam says like this: everything is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is granted. These two things exist together. Although everything is foreseen, I'm reading from page 287, although everything is foreseen in the fullest extent of the word, and thus predetermined, this does not negate our experience of free will and the ability to freely create our destiny. So the Rambam sort of just says they both exist. They're both there together. We're just going to leave that paradox as it is. In the words of Rabbi Tatz, I heard him trying to explain this idea, and he said, we Jews, we have a paradox, and we love this paradox. We're happy with this paradox, right? And everything that we ever think about, the farther, if we follow it down to the depths, is going to arrive at this same paradox. And this is the paradox of the infinite and how we finite beings can exist together at the same time, or whatever that means, space, as the infinite. And we can't, since we're finite, it's technically, I don't know what other word to use, impossible for us to understand infinite. Because we are limited. We are finite and limited, so we can't do it. We can't understand finite. And how could we even exist? If something's infinite, nothing else can exist. But somehow we do. This is a paradox. Where it comes out in our story over here is Rav Tzadok HaKohen uses this concept to try and explain a totally amazing perspective on this story. So we said in the beginning of this lesson today that the princess tells him on the scarf that we're going to be able to find the princess on a mountain of gold, pearl palace on top of a mountain of gold, right? So Rabbi Klein explains. 1 second. Normally, how do we find gold in a mountain? Normally, the gold inside the mountain is hidden, and it's covered up, and it's dirty, and you got to take it out, and you got to crack away the dirt, and then you gotta burn it, and you have to melt it so all the impurities can come out. It's not clean, it's dirty, and you have to work to get through it. You have to work to find it, right? That's the way a mountain usually is, right? And that mountain, that analogy, represents one way of looking at our path through life and the struggles that we face, right? Every time we're going through life and we struggle with something, we work through a difficulty, right? We're finding the gold, and we see it even, right? Let's say we even have emunah, and we're seeing how we're finding things, and we're working through things, and we experience growth. We see some gold, but we still know that we're struggling through that difficulty, and we're mamish hammering away at the mountain, and we're trying to remove the dirt, and it's not clean, and it's not easy. It's difficult, right? That's the way that we usually look at the world. So,
in other words, like the mountain is a b'diavad. If it were ideally, we would say, you don't want to be dealing with the mud. Right. It's just something you put up with, and you have to overcome to get to the gold.
Right. So, what if at the end of the journey, we're going to look back, and we can all do this. We probably all experience this to some extent now. You go through a really hard time, and you struggle, and it's difficult, and it could be a long time, it could be years. You're really working, and at the end of it, you mamish come to a conclusion. You come to a tikkun. Something amazing happens, and you break through it, and you learn something about yourself, and you see that you've grown, and you see that you've developed, right? A stronger connection. You're more spiritual, you're deeper, you're stronger, right? Whatever it might be, at the end of this thing, right? You can look back and say at that point, wow, you know what? I see now that all those things I went through, they really helped me. They were so hard at the time, but they really helped me. And now I see that I couldn't have become the person that I am if I didn't go through those difficult things, right? So that end perspective is kind of like seeing the gold and seeing how all those things I did previously were were actually steps towards a positive conclusion. But I'm still, if I'm not at the right level, it's still realizing that I was in that dirty mountain, right? And I had to clean it up. I had to break through the mud, right? But he asked the question, what if it was possible, is it possible that we could have the vision of Hashem? That at the end, when we reached a certain level, we were able to look back and not even really remember, not even really see anything, not see any dirt. That we look back and we just say, everything was always a golden mountain. Everything was gold. Everything was pure, shining gold. And only from that perspective, right? So Rav Tzadok is telling us that there's such a level to get to. And he says it in a beautiful language. Let me see if I can find it here. 1 second. Yeah. After choosing to, this is on page 295, by the way, way ahead. After choosing to embark on paths of tshuva and correcting his ways, one may come to feel that a natural corollary of the very freedom of choice that has allowed him to do tshuva is a debilitating sense of guilt stemming from the awareness that he is alone, having chosen those actions with his free will, is responsible for the burden of his sins, a burden too heavy for him to bear. That's without this perspective. At this point, having achieved a secure plateau of growth and rectification, the truth of Yediyah provides a retrospective, past-oriented encouragement, bringing one to the awareness that this entire process was part of the master plan, and that it couldn't have happened any other way. And to this, he quotes the famous statement of the Gemara, in the place where a Baal Tshuva stands, even a perfect tzaddik cannot stand. Right? There's two perspectives. We can say, you know what? Life has been so hard. Everything has been so difficult. And I made so many mistakes. And I buried myself. Right? I did these things and now I'm experiencing the results of it, the consequences of it. It's such a heavy weight to bear. Right? But if we work through with a Odessa Ilah perspective, and we work hard on our tshuva, and we listen to the princess, and we see that we're on a path, and we're always moving and growing, and we begin to develop this perspective that everything is there for me as a way to help me grow, to help me to become better and more connected. And if I get to that ultimate level of tshuva, and it's a high level, it's not easy, I can get to such a level that when I look back now, I have a perspective that is akin to a godly perspective. I look back and I see that those sins that I did, those averas that I did, absolute gold. Right? Don't take this as like one soundbite about anything. We have to explain this, right? It's important. All those things, even the bad things I did, gold, absolute gold. Every step of the way was gold, and everything was needed to get me to where I am now, right? And he says in another place. Listen to this. Two important things. Let's begin, page 291. Let's begin with what Reb Tzadok is not saying. Reb Tzadok is neither saying that it is ever permissible to act based on the awareness of the truth of Yediyah, nor that one simply may choose to retrospectively view an action as having been in accordance with the will of Hashem. Meaning, a person can never say, you know what? In the future, everything that I'm doing is going to be necessary and is going to be gold. So therefore, I'm going to go out right now and rob a bank and marry 6 women or do whatever and I don't know, wear shatnez, right? I'm going to go and do all these terrible things, bacon, cheeseburger, whatever, because you know what? I read the Lost Princess. I know in the end it's all going to be good, right? That's not how it works, because then you're not doing it right, and it's not going to work out that way. because you're living without that perspective.
So just to explain, to go back a little further, we're working backwards here. It's great. The way Rav Tzadok explains the difference, there's a number of different opinions, and Rabbi Yaakov brings in a bunch of them here, but the way Rav Tzadok explains the paradox of Yediah, meaning everything is known by Hashem, of course, and Bechira, meaning we still need to have free choice, he explains it's a difference of perspective. Meaning from Hashem's perspective is 100% Yediah perspective. From his perspective, he knows. He knows what's going to be, he knows what was, he knows what is, he knows what's going to be. Those terms don't even apply to him. He's totally outside of time. Hashem is Yediah perspective. From our perspective in the moment must always be Bechira perspective. From as far as we're concerned, we have the choice to choose what's the right thing or to choose the thing that's not right.
Right.
But what comes out from it, and just one more thing to add here that Rabbi Yaakov starts to talk about, he says that the Yetzer Hara primarily has, he says the Yetzer Hara has two tools, right? One is to get the person to sin. He wants you to do that. But much more than he wants that is he wants you to feel so terrible after the fact, right? So I think what Rabbi Yaakov and Rav Tzadok are coming to explain here, to try to bring out, is from our perspective, yes, Bechira. A person did an Avera, they must do tshuva. But like you're saying, once that tshuva process, once you've done what you can in that tshuva process, you can then look back at it. It has to be only with looking back, right? Like Rav Gisselson said, you can't decide, okay, I'm going to go do this, and then it's all Ratzon Hashem. Hashem knew I was going to do it anyway. We can't do that. But after the fact, after we've done tshuva meaning literally, we've returned ourselves closer and our perspective closer to Hashem. We've come closer to Hashem, right? At that point, you can start having like the term. 289 says it perfectly. Which page? 289. 289. Well, I was going to say we can go back to that term on 278 of an elevated perspective, and the perspective of the tzaddikim, right? Where the tzaddikim don't see, they recognize, they're always holding in this mindset, in this outlook towards the world, that everything is from Hashem and everything is for good. And even though there's machlekes and poorness and bitterness and all these terrible things happening, they're living in the world's ilah, right? In the higher world. They understand that it's all from Hashem, that it's all Yediah. It's Yediah perspective. But we can only do that as far as our own maisim, as far as our own deeds and actions, from a Bechira perspective. And 289, which...
That takes you further. It's the honoring of Hashem, because if we go back on the path immediately, don't let the Yetzer Hara, then we pass the test and we are honoring Hashem.
Right.
That's huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By not letting the Yetzer...
That's right.
Exactly. By not letting the Yetzer Hara be successful with his stronger tool,
it's interesting.
Brings the greatest honor to Hashem.
He says over here at the bottom of 289, by the way, he says, like most people don't talk about this. Because everyone says, if you look at the bottom paragraph, well, other tzaddikim refrain from discussing these awesome ideas openly for fears that their views being abused and misused. Rav Tzadok was a Talmud of the Mei Shiloach, the Ishbitzer Rebbe, who was very, very much spoke about these ideas. And we have to give a warning about these ideas, because they can be misused and mistreated. But one thing I hear so often nowadays from people who are trying to grow is that we need to talk about these things now. In our generation, we need to hear these things. Many people say. And if you want to look at 293, just listen to what he says over here. Therefore, it is important to clarify that Reb Tzadok's radical idea is intended solely for the sake of encouragement, to provide the recovering Jew with the knowledge that if he chooses correctly from this point onward, it is possible that one day in the future he will attain the awesome awareness that validates the entire journey, both the triumphs as well as the failures. But it's only if I get there. But just the knowledge to know that, you know what, there's going to be a time when I'm gonna get to a certain point in my life where I'm gonna be able to look back and I'm gonna see how everything was gold, the mountain was gold, right? Another way, just this a little, it's connected but a little bit off the page. While we're speaking about super controversial ideas and putting them out onto the internet, let's add one more aspect to it. So one of the things we're saying over here is that it's possible to look back and say that I did something wrong and it needed to happen. We don't say ever, you know what, I'm going to do something wrong now because if it's going to happen, that means it needed to happen. We don't say that. We always do everything in our power to avoid doing the wrong thing, to avoid doing an avera, to avoid, and we never give ourselves justification to do such a thing, right? But what Rabbi Nachman is saying over here, and it's connected to this, the main thing Rabbi Nachman says in this chapter is, but when it does happen, and you find yourself falling, right? That's not the main goal of the Satan, of the Yetzer Hara. The main goal is to make you look at yourself and feel disgusted with yourself and feel like you're carrying a tremendous burden and feel yush, despair, depression, and knock you down. Because once he's got, if one avera, that's one avera. But if he knocks you down into depression and despair, you're down for weeks or more. Chas v'shalom. God forbid. Right? So this is the tactic of the Yetzer Hara. Another way that we can use this, even though we don't have that perspective yet and we haven't gotten there yet, maybe, and we don't look back and see everything as gold, but at least we can comfort ourselves a little bit and say, you know what? This is part of my journey. I'm not proud of it. I'm not happy with it. But this is part of my journey. This is part of the path. And you know what? I failed. I fell. Now I got to get back on the path. And I got to move. Even though I don't see it right now, I don't see it as gold right now, it's part of my journey. And I need to get through it. And I'm going to move now forward. Then I can take Rav Tzadok, the way Rabbi Klein explains it. And I can say, and now I'm going to try and do everything in my power because I want to see the gold. I want to be able to look back and see and not feel this way about it. I want to be able to look back and see the gold, right? So I can move forward in that way. Fantastic. Totally amazing. I think we didn't give it maybe quite as much as we could have, but we only have so much time in these lessons, you know. So this is the idea of the Golden Mountain, and then he explains that right at the end, the last part about the Palace of Pearls, right? I'm sure you saw it. It's just a very quick, beautiful idea. It's essentially the same idea. He explains with beautiful, apparently scientific detail over here, how a pearl is made, and he says like this. He says, it is a well-known fact that pearls are formed when a foreign entity, often a parasite, enters the shell of a mollusk such as an oyster or a clam, and begins to irritate its flesh. When this happens, the oyster secretes something, right, made of calcium and protein, which coats the parasite to protect itself from harm. And over a period of time, as layer upon layer is applied, a pearl is formed this way. What does that mean?
Miava.
Right? Maybe it's Meira, I don't know.
Maybe it's what?
Maybe it's Meira, he's afraid of that thing.
No, it's Nasa Kischuyas. It's made into a beautiful thing.
I hear.
Mm-hmm.
But what do we see over here? How is the pearl made? The pearl isn't made in some kind of nice, fancy factory or some kind of, in some artisan shop with, incense burning and music playing, right? No, it's something's wrong with this clam. There's something bad inside the clam, and so it starts to work, and it needs to keep working on this problem. And as it's working through this problem, layer upon layer is built on this pearl, and what comes out is something that's a natural pearl is mamish unbelievably beautiful and special. He says over here, this is, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't usually say something in his book is not true, Rabbi Yaakov, right? But over here he says that even natural pearls can be even more valuable than diamonds. Is that a real thing? Mm-hmm. Wow. Sorry, Rabbi Yaakov, to doubt you. Didn't mean to. But you see, what does Palace of Pearl mean? It means the same idea. Just like you're going to be able to look back and see that everything was gold. All that stuff you went through, that you thought was your mistakes, and you thought was the worst part of you, that was the gold that brought you to where you are now. All those things you thought you were doing, that was a pearl being made, right?
In a way, I think it's even a more powerful mushal than the mountain of gold, because to me it just screams this whole idea that we speak about, that the Yetzer Hara, like going back to Adam and the sin of the Eitz Hadas, and how what happened was the Nachash, who was the snake, at the time, the way that when when Adam was created, the snake, who represents the Yetzer Hara, of course, was something external, right? He was a snake. Adam was a person, the snake was a snake. Right now, I don't know about you guys, there's no snake telling us what to do. It's coming from inside. One of the things that happened after the Chet was this voice that dragged us along to do things that are not Ratzon Hashem went inside us. And the tragedy of it is that we think it's a part of us, but it's not a part of us. It's like this parasite that goes into the pearl, that goes into the clam, or oyster. It's not really a part of us. We think that this, our problems, our yucky stuff, our taivas, right. When we're drawn after bad, we think that's a part of us, right? We have a good part and we have a bad part, and we're trying to suppress one and bring out the other one. It's not even a part of us, but it's what causes us to produce these pearls.
We're making our own pearls.
Mamish. That's.
We're making our own pearls. It's fantastic.
So it's this idea that conflict makes us stronger, but it's when something is
so much more than
is bugging us, right? That's what kind of gets us up in the morning to fight. Yeah. And like we said, that's what brings the greatest honor to Hashem of all, right?
So this is a tremendous chapter of encouragement, right? And we should take all these lessons and use them. I wanted to say that the princess, the way that we're bringing this all out is that the princess left the viceroy this note from her headscarf, and he held it up to the sun, right? This is the thing that guides him on his journey. It gives him the encouragement and helps him to be able to figure out how to move forward, to eventually be able to look back and see the gold mountain, and to be able to build that palace of pearls and get where he needs to get, right? I believe very strongly that I think it's obvious, but I'll just say it anyway, that Rabbi Nachman is talking about this story. He's talking about the story of the lost princess. That it's the kerchief, it's what's written on the kerchief, and it's the thing that we're able to get together. You believe this group gets together, and we go through this stuff, and we hear all this amazing, encouraging words, and we see how our whole life is really wrapped up in this. We see this story is us. It's why it's called the story of our lives. We see ourselves in it. We realize that this is my whole existence in this story, and every week. We try to come every week. Every week we come and we learn and we bring out encouragement and we bring out ideas that build us and help us, right? This is our gift from Rabbi Nachman to help us along the way. This is the Rabbi Nachman's kerchief to us, and getting together and speaking together. And we saw this past week in the shul on Shabbos, that when Jews get together and they speak in Yiras Hashem, we speak about important things and we speak about deep things. Right? When we do that, creates such a powerful bond that gives us such spiritual strength to be able to work through all the shtus in the world, and to be able to ignore all the mud and all the dirt that we're finding while we're trying to find the gold. Right? So I think all the encouragement that we see in this chapter, we're trying to do together, and I think we're doing a good job of it. And we should continue, and we should only get more and more from each other, support each other, and learn with each other. And Yimritz Hashem, we'll look back together and see how everything was a mountain of gold.
Amen. Shkoyach.
Shkoyach, everybody. Any comments, questions, waves? Lori? Well wishes? Besuris Tovos?
Okay.
Alter, you got something to say?
Nothing.
No? Okay, you're unmuted.
You explained everything quite well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody, have a totally amazing week. All the best.
Good night, everyone.